free-thinking radio. Mugzzi is not your regular card flipper. She is one of a kind.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ms. Mugzzi Show. Tonight I have two of my favorite people on, Janet and Stewart Swerdlow. They do tremendous work, lots of research. They really put themselves out there, and I look up to them because they're always about 6 months ahead of my learning curve, and so I really like and enjoy them to come onto the show and help open that window of knowledge that we all are needing right now. Right now, I think things are getting really fun and exciting. There's new horizons, new opportunities coming, and I see this whole thing opening up, and Stewart and Janet always help teach that. So I'm going to bring them on at the same time, probably. Hi, Mr. and Mrs. Swerdlow.
Well, hello, Miss Mugzzi.
I got you both. I know you guys have been doing a lot, so let's just jump into it because you guys have new information. Janet sent me an email. I didn't even know what she was talking about yet because I've never heard about this stuff. So you guys want to just go?
Well, why don't you tell me what specifically you haven't heard about, and that's where we could start. That'd be great.
Okay. It's hard to hear you. It sounds like you're in the background.
Okay.
Janet. Okay, let's talk about this because I'm seeing lots of talk about the politicians. And I know from doing my own research that it's just a big game. The right side is the left side. They're conservatives, they're liberals, but they're all the same hand of the New World Order. Anytime you try to teach somebody or show them that one of their persons that they really are attached to is part of the system, they get irate, and they do horrendous things like they'll block off their friends, they give threats on Facebook, they send out hate mail. But the truth is that these guys would not be in front of the TV or on the ballot at all if they weren't part of the New World Order, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
In fact, it was so interesting because Stewart did a podcast here not too long ago about Ron Paul. And as, I don't know if anybody follows us on Facebook, but he's got, both have a lot of friends on there. So I'm assuming that your audience is listening and reading this stuff. He has so much response so fast because basically what we talk about is that, as you just said, it's really one side running both sides, but it's really hard to get that across to people. And there was so much activity. I said, geez, I wish you guys would get this excited about other things. It just really sparked some debate going on there.
Can you hear us, Ms. Mugzzi?
Yeah, I got you really well. Stewart, it's Janet that it's hard to hear.
Yeah. Did you hear what she said earlier, just before?
Yeah.
About the podcast I did about Ron Paul. And basically you're right, because it doesn't matter who the candidates are. If they're using the standard system to get elected, then they're part of the whole control system. And even though you have someone like Ron Paul who kind of stands out from all the others, still he has an agenda. And I know that a lot of people don't want to hear that, and they think he's the greatest hope since pizza. But that's just the way it is, and nobody gets elected. Anyone who gets into an office as high as the presidency is put there purposely. It doesn't matter what the rigged election machines tally up at the end, because it's meaningless. It's the person has already been chosen and is being groomed to get into that position.
And I think that's really a good point that a lot of people don't realize that
your mouth.
What a lot of people don't realize is that these people are groomed from birth, and they're put in certain places, and basically they're all related. If that you go and do the research, you're going to find out that all these people are related one way or the other to somebody, whether it's a politician or whether it's a movie star, or Oprah Winfrey has also been shown to be related to all kinds of politicians and people of quote-unquote power. So they're all related on some level. They keep the power amongst a very small group of families.
Janet, is there any way you could come closer to the mic, because it sounds like you're in a tunnel?
Is this any better?
No.
Okay, because I'm as close to the phone as without eating it.
Call in again.
You want me to try and call in again and see if the connection...
Yeah, I'll go ahead and open up your mic. It might just be a glitch in the system.
Okay, well done.
Okay. Well,
right.
I'll still be here. I'm on a different line, so I'll just continue with that and say that, like Janet was mentioning, all the high elite members of the media, of the politicians, are all related, basically one way or another. And even President Obama is related to the Bushes and to the royal family of England and all of that. And then that's, of course, assuming that his official lineage is correct, which I don't believe that it is anyway. I think that his whole background, his history is completely fabricated. And those who have read my newsletter on my website, expansions.com, a couple of months ago know I posted a whole article up there that basically said there might be two President Obamas that we see. One could be actually an Indonesian who might be related to the former president of Indonesia, and the other may actually be the illegitimate son of Malcolm X, and a woman who was known to have worked for the government as an Illuminati agent. So whether he was born in Kenya or not doesn't matter. He is still an enigma, and basically he is set up to destroy the United States and incorporate it into the Illuminati global system in a way that destroys national identity and the power of the United States. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to ask you a question. So what do you think that about some of these channelings where they claim that Obama, I call him Obama, is a light worker?
Listen, as you well know, anything that's channeled is a bunch of malarkey. It's government satellite transmissions, and so I don't care who channels it or where they say it comes from, it's all programming and mind control. He's as much a light worker as Adolf Hitler.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you, Janet. Go ahead. And you guys just dump out there.
Thought it's also interesting that, as Stewart was saying, how everybody is related to everybody else, and how that, people don't understand that everybody is basically on the same agenda, which is to get you by your emotions and fling you around a little bit. And the more that they can get you going with your emotions, then you really don't see the real play that's going on. You don't recognize that everybody is just essentially a puppet. And so you have to learn to get your emotions in order and get balanced and centered and grounded and, move forward that way. People don't recognize how open that they are in the auric field, the chakra bands, however you want to phrase it and look at it. And so they're very subject to what's being bombarded at the masses to accept what's being put forward without even recognizing that these aren't even their own thoughts.
Well, what do you think that their ploy is? I mean, I've seen it with Palin. They dog her, and then they bring her in as the Almighty, and then they dog her, and then bring her in. And they're doing the same thing with Ron Paul. They let him be the nice guy, and then he'll slip up and say something that, he's part of the New World Order, and then he'll divulge some truth that nobody knew about before, or he'll fight, let's shut down the Federal Reserve. What do you think they're doing?
I think, in confusion, they make people follow along. If you go into a crowded movie theater and all the doors are closed and you yell that there's a fire and that you know the way out, there's going to be a lot of confusion and disorientation, and so you follow whomever you think gives you the best information. So it's like the whole country is like locked in this theater, and there's a fire going, and all these people are shouting out information and rules and ideas, and so people get so confused they don't know what to think or who to follow, and that's a form of mind control. It's a way of fragmenting the personality, making them unsure of who and what they are, or what the truth is, and so they don't know what to believe, and so they believe anything.
And here in the U.S., we are so imprinted, so mind controlled from the minute you get to school, that anybody can be president, anybody can run the country, and so most kids grow up thinking, hey, if I really wanted to be, I could be president, and so therefore they want one of their own or someone they perceive to be one of their own to be the president so they can identify with that. But what happens, as I mentioned earlier, is that basically they are putting forth an agenda that somehow emotionally that you relate to, and whatever candidate is putting forth that emotional agenda that you relate to, you go with that flow versus thinking there's a bigger plan here. It just doesn't even cross your head. You're just so enthralled with what's happening.
And didn't they admit, like when they use the caption for change, they allow people to perceive what they think change is. So they're not committed to any paradigm. They allow the other person to think what they want, and then they just keep doing their Luciferian agenda.
Well, a lot of it, of course, is what they say, not what they do. And so people get so enthralled with the words that they don't recognize that nothing is being done according to what they say is going to be done. So it's just, if they just keep people going round and round and round, so they don't understand what's really going on in the world ever.
Did you guys hear me? No.
No.
What do you? Oh, how do you? The system's malfunctioning. How do you guys? You guys are the experts in this industry. How would somebody know if they're being mind controlled? How could they center themselves? And what do you recommend so that they can be more intuitive or more wiser with their thoughts and wishes?
Well, we have to understand that everybody on the entire planet has some form of mind control, whether it's a mild version, what I call the mass population control or general control, where it's just broadcast that they go along with everything and not complain, to being very intensely and specifically programmed with functions that are very detailed, and there's everything in between. So regardless of who you are or where you are, you have some form of programming and mind control. And so in order to undo this or to take control back of your own mind, there are protocols and exercises, visualizations that we do to achieve this. For example, first thing I always teach is for people to balance their T-bar at the pineal gland, to put a brown merger there so that you reintegrate the fragmented pieces of the personality. Keep yourself in the violet protection technique so that the ELF and microwave cannot bombard you and get through to you. And then, depending on which specific programs you have, there are different types of deprogramming protocols that I've outlined in my books and DVDs so that people can follow it and work to reintegrate themselves and undo the programming that's been embedded. There's also a lot of people who have inherited programming, and that means in their ancestry, over the centuries and even thousands of years, there have been programs that were installed through ancient techniques that over time became genetically embedded or induced, and then it can be passed on to their offspring and future generations. And so for this, I teach a way of going into your DNA and opening up sections to see what kind of inherited programming you have. And the other issue is that what we have in us now, we can easily pass on to our offspring genetically. So by deprogramming yourself, you're helping future generations to be free and not be part of the whole control system that's on the planet.
Well, and another thing that I would like to add for those people who have read my Decoding Your Life book is that, first of all, there are many layers, as Stewart is talking about, and you're talking about being mind-controlled and programmed. The reason that can happen in the first place, besides the inheritance and all of that, is people don't know who and what they are. And so because of that, they don't know what somebody else is even putting in them. And the example I like to use is just, for instance, growing up. People absorb their parents' mind patterns, their parents' attitudes, their parents' verbiage. And as they grow up, then they start spitting that back out, and they don't even recognize that is not a part of them, that it's some energetic connection that basically their parents have made with them, or they with their parents, and so it's coming out. Or maybe it was a trusted teacher or a friend or anybody. It's not really who and what they are. And I had a really great exercise in the member section of our site here in December and January, where we actually went through a lot of discarding of stagnant energy holders in our life, and we made a correlation with what that stagnant energy placeholder meant in our mind. And so as we threw out stuff in the clutter of our homes and our cars and our offices, then we labeled it what was coming out of our mind. And so people began to get a real clarity over who and what they were. And as that happens, then as you start pulling off that first layer of people, places, and things, then the next layer is what Stewart is telling people about. Then we can hear the programming that's coming in. Then we can hear the clarity or non-clarity in other people's voices and see it in their actions. So we have to, again, always start with ourselves, and as that becomes clean and clear, then everything else begins to make sense in a whole new different level. The clutter is gone.
Do you think, in your opinions, that the solar flares is having some effect on our consciousness and that the programming's not going to work?
Well, the program is working. That's not an issue. But the solar flares do create physical and mental issues for people. And what I have noticed is, since the latest coronal ejections have occurred, is that people have become more angry, more tense, and also more depressed. And so I've seen a lot of people go into withdrawal from life. I've seen people become aggressive. There seems to be an effect emotionally. So in other words, whatever was disturbing you before the solar flares began has been intensified by the bombardment. And the programming does not get blocked, because even though there are solar flares and it might affect things in the atmosphere, and yes, it might affect the transmissions from satellites, that's why the Illuminati have ground antenna cell phone towers, and they use ground stations to amplify and enhance the programming through television, radio, cell phone towers, all of these things, even the electrical current in your home. Because what people don't understand is that the power plants in your area overproduce electricity, and then what they don't send out through the electrical transmissions, they put into the ground, so the ground itself becomes charged, and that flows into your home, and you have this undercurrent of energy that is basically like being in a minefield. And so the radio waves, the mind control waves, can flow through that, and that's why they do it, so that if there are solar flares, if there is a disturbance in the satellite system, they have a ground-based system to replace it temporarily. So we're kind of bombarded from above and below, and that's why it's so important to not only work on yourself, but to keep your home in protection and your vehicles, etc. And I also believe in putting in those surge protectors in your not your fuse box, but where the electrical wires come into your home. And also there are devices you can put that block many of these ELF waves that come through the electrical system, and people should look into that as well.
Now, we actually have a whole house surge protector, and our events manager actually sells these. Patricia, events at expansions.com. She actually sells these whole house protectors which prevent this dirty electricity, is what she calls it, and that's what I think is a great name, from being dumped back into your home. And it does make a difference. You can feel, again, you live with it every day, so you don't recognize it's there until it's no longer there. And instead of having your nervous system like being on edge all the time, it does help remove a lot of that. And of course, there's also things you can take and do physically and mentally to build the nervous system up. But there's lots of things that people can do to help aid their centering, balancing, grounding, not accepting this kind of program that's being put out there.
And another thing is, Ms. Mugzzi, is that people need to also watch what they take into their bodies, because if you eat the commercial food, the processed food that you get in your supermarkets, and you take medications that your doctor and pharmacy give you, then what you're doing is ingesting plastics and heavy metals and other chemicals that are purposely placed in these foods and medications that embed in your bones and in your cellular structure with heavy metals, and in fact make you into a walking antenna, so that no matter where you are on this planet, whether you're on it or in it or under it, you are picking up the transmissions. No matter how they're transmitted, you are picking them up as a living, walking antenna. You basically have become like a Borg, like you'd see on Star Trek, where you're part biological and part artificial. So we need to detox and remove these heavy metals from our bodies, get the fillings out of your mouth, do protocols that remove heavy metals from every part of you, and do not eat the commercial processed foods, because you're basically ingesting poison.
And the other thing that I was talking about too, again going back to my December, January articles on the membership site, I talked a lot about how that the Illuminati itself is parasitic from us. We pay the taxes, we support them. Everybody down here on the lower end of the pyramid, and so what happens is that 85% of all adults in North America have some kind of parasitic animal within them. And so this is the frequency which the Illuminati hook into. And we want to take out of get those parasites out of our physical body, because that's helping them hook into their parasitic use of us. So there's lots of these little ins and outs that we can do to clean ourselves up, so that we don't have to accept consciously or unconsciously what's being bombarded and put out to us. And people just don't understand, everything. Like we talked about right in the beginning, they're whipped around by their emotions. They get caught up in this and that. They don't go any further. They stop. And what Stewart and I do is we take a look at way down deep what's within every person that's attracting these kind of things to start with. And the deeper we've gone and the more we've cast off, we find, these parasites are living inside your cells, tiny, tiny little things. But it still allows the Illuminati, the global handlers, whomever, to get in there and live off of your lifeblood. And we need to stop that. We need to stop it now, not tomorrow or the next day. We need to stop allowing these people to hook into us, so that we can figure out who we are and what our power is, and then utilize it.
Okay, so take me the next step further. Everybody's waking up to this. People are doing their research. I'm seeing it every day. They're getting healthier. I did not know that about the parasite, Janet. That's awesome. But let's go the next step. So where are we headed now? Let's say we can get this all under control. Where's the human race going, and what's coming for us? Do you guys know?
Well, that's a very big question, because where's the human race going? Well, That depends on the human race. There are literally infinite possibilities of what direction we can head in. I agree. I think a lot of people are starting to say, hey, what the heck is going on here? This doesn't seem right, doesn't feel right. But, I also see a lot of people afraid to say or do anything about it. They may know and be waking up and seeing things that they don't like, but they're afraid to challenge it or to question it. So that's another issue. And I think before they can actually do something on a global basis, they have to start with themselves, do their release work, to grow up the child within, communicate with their oversoul, do their deprogramming, and then once they feel like they had some kind of a connection to their real core self and to the God mind within, then they can actually project that out as an individual and as a species, so that we can remove the victimization and depressive mind patterns that have taken over the species of humanity for so long, and then undo that and become a really, truly free race. Now, many of the listeners and those who go on my site know that I've talked for a couple of years now about what's going on in the Kuiper Belt, which is the region of space surrounding our solar system. And, I talked about it a lot of years. A lot of people made fun of me for it. And then finally, it was on the news. And then the news said, yeah, there's something going on in the Kuiper Belt. Some object is throwing asteroids and meteors at us. And there's energy from the Kuiper Belt that's blocking the Pioneer spacecraft from going beyond the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. And on and on and on. And little by little, they start to release information. So yes, there is something going on in the Kuiper Belt. There is a massing of some kind of a fleet, for lack of a better term, and I hate to sound, la-la about it, but these beings, it's more than one group. There's a lot of groups out there that seem to be like a United Nations of beings that have come here, but like I mentioned, they're not love, light, and peace either. They're not here to save humanity. They're here to do something for themselves. And we're just happen to be the place that they're doing it. These beings out there obviously do not like the Illuminati agenda, and so they are trying to see how they can remove the Illuminati and put their own control system in here. So it's very much like the Earth has become the Iraq of the galaxy, and this coalition of beings out there has decided, hey, we're going to remove the tyrants from the Earth and put our own system in there. So, it's not like, we wave the flags and throw flowers in the streets when the white knights come. It's not going to be like that. It's just we're going to exchange one system for another system. And so that tells me that while humanity might be waking up and thinking they need to change, they're not sure what the change should be. And they have been so used to control and abuse for so long, they don't have the conception of true freedom. And until that occurs, we're not going to have a really free Earth. And so my opinion is that we, instead of looking at who's running things, look at who's running you. What's going on in your own mind that's contributing to the abuse and tyranny and oppression on the Earth, and then get rid of that. And then we can project that out as a singularity and as a group.
And I think what's interesting, too, like what Stewart is talking about, again, going back to Illuminati as parasites and them being the oppressors, well, the way that Stewart and I look at everything is that the outer world is always going to outpicture whatever it is you're putting out. So here we have this group of people who are oppressing another group of people, so it makes sense that there would be something even bigger out there that's going to come and oppress them them and be parasitic off of them. So I find that interesting. And what I also find interesting is as we balance the mind pattern, because most people are kind of in a status quo. Again, whether or not they're being thrown about by life, emotions, the media, it doesn't matter. They're in a status quo, and they're either moving a little bit forward, a little bit back, but they kind of have a certain band that they operate in. Even people who think they are thinking outside the box, they are still encapsulated within a specific band of thought. And so what Stewart and I do is we help them look at their positives, because people are afraid of their positives, and they're afraid of their personal power, and they're afraid of being all that they can be, and they're afraid of the negative, and taking a look at all that they can be as far as that goes as well. And when you get that in balance, then you know both sides of the same coin. And when that happens, you are done. You don't need to be oppressed. You don't need to be a victim. You understand both sides, what it's like to oppress, what it's like to be oppressed. And you can move along, and perhaps, as you're saying, well, what will happen to human species? Maybe it won't exist anymore, or maybe it will divide out. Those who are ready to move along will move along, and those who still need that, some kind of oppression, because they haven't gotten it yet, they're going to stay and be oppressed. So it could even be a division of the species at some point. I think your imagination is limitless, and as long as you can imagine it somewhere, someplace, it exists.
Wow, that was well said. And you pretty much covered everything. What about, a lot of people that I talk to on Facebook, they're awake, they're aware, they know what's going on, but their family members aren't. Their society isn't. The grocery store is not. And there's such a dichotomy of what we know to be true and what their mind control is. So what advice would you give to those people, and how would you handle somebody like that? Should we ignore them, yell at them, or what?
The best thing is always to work on yourself, because the outer world has to reflect the changes. And what I see a lot is people are making some changes, but they're not going deep enough. They're not getting into their foundation. They're not getting to the bottom of things. And that, again, I'm going to go back. Such simple tools Stewart and I teach. If people would just utilize them, it's amazing. Just cleaning out your house and understanding what each and everything means, because you have to have a physical representation of the non-physical, and that's the law, the universal law that the Illuminati use, just like the example I just gave you. If they want to be parasitic, they make sure that you're full of parasites, and then they can hook into that on the non-physical, energetic level. I'm actually giving a seminar the end of February called Mind Pluck 2012, where we are going to be pulling out what is not you so you can find out who you are. But these are extremely simple tools, and even like myself, as I was doing my cleaning, I was doing my daily blog, I found all kinds of computer cords and electrical stuff and all of this, and I kept pulling out boxes and boxes of cords. I'm thinking cords to nowhere, cords to nothing. And I'm recognizing, okay, cords, what is a cord? A cord is a frequency line. It's not connected. These are my thoughts and things that I put out there that I never did anything with. So I removed those, cleaned them up, released those out of my life, and as I did so, I cleaned out the non-physical. And I found boxes. I realized I had so many boxes of stuff, because of course we do a lot of shipping and whatnot. But I have just tons of boxes, and I thought, again, boxes, empty boxes. Why do I have boxes? And I thought, okay, part of me feels boxed in. I've got to get rid of these. I can't be boxed in anymore. And also cubicle, that's programming. So they represent something that they're holding in. And I'm going to tell you a really fascinating story. And this not only happened to me, but it happened to a few other people who are doing this exercise along with me in the membership section. I had a couple of purses, and they're knit purses that needed to be washed. And I didn't even know you could wash them. But a couple of years ago, that long ago, somebody said, you can wash these purses. So I set them aside, and I thought, okay, I'm going to wash the purses one day. Well, here I am 2 years later, and now that I'm actually doing it on the site, and people are watching me, and I have to come up with something, I thought, okay, I'm going to wash the purses. I washed the purses, and I probably had like 6 baths of water of them coming out black. And when I was done, I hung them up. And the next day, the next thing I chose to clean out what happened to be a drawer in my bedroom. In my drawer, in the corner, I found $650. So here I had a purse which represents my energy, or, which that's what all that money is your energy. That was dirty. I cleaned it out. I prepared for something new, and I woke up the next day and it dawned on me, let's clean out this other drawer, and I found money. Now, I said to Stewart, who hides $650 or puts it away and forgets about it? I can't remember doing it. I don't know when I did it, but if I hadn't cleaned out those purses, then it wouldn't have opened up something else. It released something in me that allowed something on the non-physical to take hold so I could do something in the physical. And people don't understand how much connection that there is between the physical and the non-physical. They don't understand that the Illuminati knows universal law, except they use it negatively. What we're doing is we're teaching people what they're doing in the negative way, and then Stewart and I are teaching them to use the same law, except in a positive way. If I give you a recipe for a cake, it doesn't matter if you're a good person or a bad person, a positive person or a negative person. You follow that recipe, you're going to get a cake. And that's what the Illuminati know. They know these laws inside and outward, and you don't know them. Stewart and I are teaching you what they are, how to use them, so you can make the same change the Illuminati is doing, except positive versus negative. So it's like I said, technically it's really simple, and they know that, but they make it sound very deep and mysterious and whatnot, and only special people will know. Well, that's baloney. These universal laws are out there for every single person. It's not that complicated once you understand what you have.
What about I've got a couple of things. That was a great story, by the way. Number one is people want to manifest. They're thinking, okay, I want to manifest, but they have junk in their trunk, and so when they manifest crap.
Yeah, that's a good point. I see that all the time. And not only that, but I find people then who manifest but then don't know how to accept what they manifest. And that, again, goes back to foundation. I'm going to go back to what I was just talking about because it's a simple story. As I was cleaning out my drawers and I was cleaning out this, and I thought to myself, again, how much stuff can I get in a drawer? I had so much stuff because what happened? I stuffed my old mind patterns. So I recognize as I'm unstuffing my drawers, I'm unstuffing what's going in my mind. And then I was, again, another realization on another level. I said, I'm getting to the bottom of the drawer. I'm getting to the bottom of my issues. So all people have to do, and very few people will take the time to do it, but you go into your house and you start pulling out your junk, you're going to be surprised. I threw out, and I'm a pretty neat person, and I'm not really a collector of junk. I had so much stuff that, if you walk in my house, it looks nice, neat, and clean, but what I had stuffed in corners and boxes, and you would be shocked at the junk I threw out. I mean, I had to call even the garbage company a couple of times to come and make extra trips to my house because I couldn't even stand to have it in my garage. I had so much junk that I was carrying from my past, and I let go, and I let go, and I let go. That's all people have to do. Let go of your junk because that's your stagnant energy. And then when you do manifest, you're going to manifest something worthwhile and that is representative of who and what you want to be versus what you were, which is the junk or the old crap in your foundation. Easy stuff, Stewart and I teach, but you got to do it.
One thing that I noticed is that you two coming together as a couple and working together, I've noticed more people getting their spouses involved. And I'm waiting for one to call in who's dying to speak to you guys. So as soon as I see his number, I'll bring him in. What about black magic? Because I know that they've gone to this school of the Golden Dawn, and they've been using black magic. That's why the judges wear their robes and stuff. How does the human race, or one of us, combat that? And is that a threat according to what our power is or our enlightenment?
Well, as I always have mentioned, you cannot be harmed by something if you don't have that in your mind pattern. When people in the Caribbean were affected by voodoo, the only way the voodoo worker could be successful is if he told his victim what he was going to do, and then the victim becomes so afraid of what that could be that he actually makes it happen to himself. So the people who are so-called black magicians, etc., they have no power over anybody unless we give it to them. And it's like what Janet was saying earlier about parasites and what I call, vampires that take your energy and take things out of you. They can't do it unless you allow them. See? So if you get rid of the mind pattern of low self-worth, self-sabotage, self-abuse, self-punishment, you remove that from your thinking, from the software going through your mind, then there's no way you can be affected by anything negative because you won't have that in your sphere of energy. So that's what I tell people. Don't be afraid of anything, because what you fear, you become. What you hate, you become. So if you remove that from your thinking process, then there's nothing to be concerned about. And if you connect to the God mind within, and you work with your oversoul on a daily basis, nothing like that can happen to you. And anything negative that begins to happen is then instantly corrected or mitigated.
And the other thing is, again, black magic is really just they're using universal law for the negative instead of the positive. And again, if it's not within your mind pattern, it can't happen. And if you are afraid, or if your fear, which vibrates at a low rate, then that energy can get in. So, the biggest thing that you can do really is to stay happy and upbeat and positive, but you can't ignore what's in your foundation or your basement, because those are like that Stewart talked about earlier. If you get depressed, that's when your frequency vibrates at a lower rate, and then therefore you are opened up to those kind of things. So, you have to know who and what you are on the most base level, so that you recognize when something is around you that doesn't belong to you. We have people that say, I have this, I have that, a lot of time. Generally, it's their own mind pattern that's creating it. Once in a while, we might find a certain attachment, but then the next step is, what is your responsibility in allowing the attachment? What did you do? Some people don't want to hear that, and they go away. We never hear from them again. They want somebody else to take it off. But it's still them. They're letting it in. If it wasn't that person, it would be some other person or some other thing, because it's within them that's attracting it. They're vibrating at the same rate. They have the same color. They have the same archetype, and therefore they have stuff in there. So, if it's not within you, it can't happen to you, and that's still the bottom line.
Yeah, and what I always say is we must take responsibility for everything that happens, the good and the bad, because if we start to blame others, we give them power over us. If we realize that we have created our lives, we have created our situations or experiences, and then we can change it. And I must have said this on your show before, and I've said it a billion times, but it's worth saying again. If you use the analogy that thought is like film, the brain is the projector, and physical reality is the screen, that means that you are creating the movie that's playing around you. So if you don't like the characters in the movie or the scenes in the movie, change the film, which is the way you think, and then something else will be projected out. So absolutely, we are each responsible. And when we understand and have a deep realization that we alone are responsible for everything in our existence, that gives us a lot of power. Then we can do and create anything.
I have actually tried this with the chemtrails. When I see the planes, I'll go, no, you're not in my reality. I don't agree to this. You must leave. And they're still back the next day. How long does it take before your manifestation actually works?
Well, Ms. Mugzzi, even if they come back, an hour later, it doesn't matter, because if you don't have the mind pattern to be affected by it, it won't make any difference. And then all the people in your area who are attracting that, they have to take their responsibility too. And Janet always talks about how, we hear, dire predictions that there'll be an earthquake here or a hurricane there, and people write in, oh, should we pray? Should we do work and get rid of it? And the answer is, you cannot take away the experiences that others have attracted to themselves, because they have requested that experience. Even if we don't like it, we can't judge what another person creates for themselves. So that's why if you don't project that mind pattern out, you will not be affected by whatever else is going on around you. And that's why you hear of stories of car accidents and everyone is killed but one person doesn't have a scratch on them, or there's a war, there's a bombing and everyone is killed and then they find one person that was survived in an air pocket. That's because the person didn't have the mind pattern, so they weren't affected by those situations. So really, whether the chemtrails are there or not doesn't make a difference, because it's just an illusion anyway, and you can choose to be affected by that illusion or not be affected by that illusion.
You want to remember, too, that everything comes from God mind. I tell people that, so we've got the Illuminati, we've got the oppressors. It still doesn't matter, it all comes from the God mind, because God mind contains all things, both positive and negative, and it's up to you to understand what part do you want to accept. So whether it's a chemtrail, we can call it bad if we want. That's a judgment, but technically it still comes from God mind. So what are we going to do about it? Do we want to accept the stuff that chemtrails pouring out, or do we want to figure out a way that we don't have to accept that? So that is every manifestation. You can manifest positively, you can manifest negatively. You can accept positive, you can accept negative. What is the universal law, and what do I want to do with that?
One of the things that I've really learned in this last week is that we really do have the mind power to change our world, or to change our outcome, our timeline, if you will. And the power really is with us. And that once you get that, there's unlimited possibilities.
Well, there are, but the issue is that a lot of people are afraid of getting that. They are afraid of their own power. They're afraid of misuse, because remember what's being outpictured in the outer world for people. There really are not a lot of people. Again, I'm going to go back to what I talked about earlier, the parasitic thing. Most people in this world it's about I win, you lose. It's very few people win-win. So if people get personal power, what are they going to do? Are they going to use it appropriately, or are they going to turn into something that they don't want to be? So what we find is that people are just as afraid of that positive, and that's what Stewart and I do our best to help encourage people. They have to look at the totality of the soul personality and all the things that they have experienced, so that they can get themselves in order, and to the point where they can accept their own personal power, where they feel worthy of it, where they can deal with it when the good things happen. Even myself, in a lot of my stuff, I determined this last year that if I don't struggle, then I don't feel worthy of whatever the prize or the goal is at the end. So I have to be able to work on eliminating that struggle mentality. So we all have these kind of little nicks and tucks and bugs that we have to work through until we can get to things more smooth sailing. So, everybody has these finer nuances, but learning to accept the positive, as wonderful as it sounds, as much as we all say we want it, and we work with people every day from all over the world, it is a real challenge for them. And so even when you make that realization that I can do things, that's the start, and that's getting the pump primed, and you're starting to get the energy flowing. But people start and stop, and that's this cleaning thing I was telling people. I said, I don't care. I said, take one thing. I don't care what it is. One magazine, one old tissue, one piece of old moldy food from your refrigerator, one piece of one can of something from your pantry. But keep the energy moving once you start flowing. You don't just do one thing today and then, stop for a week, because that's start and stop. And anytime you do that, as you know, it takes longer to get going again. So that powerful personal manifestation, it sounds really good on paper. It sounds really good when people talk about it. But when it comes right down to it, we watch people balk all the time and refuse to accept that personal power that they have.
Stewart, did you want to add anything?
Well, I agree with everything that Janet says, and we just have to ask ourselves, what do we want to have in our experience, in our reality, and we can create anything. And you were right when you said that you can do and create and be anything that you want to be. I always talk about how 97% of all DNA is identical no matter what species you are, and it's only the 3% that differentiate differentiate species and individuals within a species. So you can imagine, what is that 97% of all existence in DNA that is identical universally? And the answer is that's the God-mind instructions in each of us, that if we tap into it and open up even a portion of it, imagine the abilities and the power that we would have physically at all times and be able to use on the earth plane. And that's there. It's just waiting for us to use it and understand it. So that's why I tell everybody, the real power, the real search is already within you. You don't have to go anywhere or look anywhere. It's already inside of you. And so tap into that. And then from it, you can do and be anything you want to be because you already are.
What about parents raising kids? What guidelines would you give them or advice you would give them?
Well, that's a very good question and a big question because, we were just talking about that today. When I had someone here from a local high school that asked me for help, and what we see is parents who are not home. They're not available. They both work. They have very little awareness of what their children are doing. For example, these kids come home and there's no one in the house. They have no one to cook for them. They eat Cheerios for dinner, or their mother might leave them a few dollars to go get McDonald's poison food, and they think that's nutritious. And so my advice to parents is be aware of your children, what's going on with them, every minute detail, because it's important these days. You read about on an almost daily basis of this teenager committing suicide because they were abused, or that one getting killed in an accident or overdosing, or a home invasion because a parent wasn't home and a rape happened. No one's watching. Nobody's caring about their own offspring. I mean, yes, there are parents who are good parents, yes, but what I'm seeing out there is that a lot of these mothers and fathers are not taking responsibility, and these children are just pretty much on their own. I mean, I've heard of parents who leave 6 and 7 and 8-year-old little girls home alone because they have to go on errands or do work, and there's no one to watch them, or they can't afford to have someone take care of them. Well, that's very dangerous, and we're coming into a society as this continues where there's a feeling of not belonging, of not knowing what unconditional love is about. It's affecting relationships, and so what do these kids do? They turn to comfort in drugs and alcohol and promiscuous sex, and then we have a society where children grow up and they don't know what they want to do, what they want to be, and so they just live at home until they're 40 or beyond. And I see that all the time. And so I think parents, if you have children, you've made the decision to have children, you've taken on the responsibility of taking care of them and guiding them until they're able to be on their own. So be consciously aware of what's in your house, what's going on in your home, what your children are doing at school, what they're learning. Teach them what you know, especially the alternative information. Make sure they're having good organic foods and not taking all kinds of garbage out there. Just be a parent, not a caretaker or someone who just provides a space for them to live in. So that would be my advice.
I think that it's very challenging these days to be a parent, but I honestly don't know any time in life probably when it's not challenging. And again, I think that for me personally, I think it's important that there be someone with your child that you know and that loves your child versus just putting them in daycare, because that's not teaching them how to attach emotionally to a person. And of course, it's much more easy to control people who are not emotionally attached or who feel emotionally isolated. And it's really very rare to find someone who loves that child as you do. And, to me, I mean, for Stewart and I, one of us has always been home for our children. I feel very fortunate that way, but we gave up a lot, material speaking, when we first had our children. We had one car, and he went to work with it, and when he came home, then that's when we grocery shopped. I stayed home with the children. And then when somebody gave us an old car that could get me back and forth to the grocery store. So we made that decision to give up some of the material, quote-unquote, comforts of life in order to give our children ourselves. And, that's what people need. People don't need material things to make them feel accepted and loved. They need that parent, or they need somebody who is emotionally connected to them to give them a sense of being and belonging here, so that they're not alone, and that they have someone that they can talk to and have accessible to them when that they need it, and somebody to watch and guide them. No different than we need our oversoul to look after us. Our children need somebody that loves them to watch after them.
What about, I see people all the time that have these massive amounts of problems and issues. And the first one that always gets their attention is they don't have any money, they don't have a job, their food stamps is getting cut off. And when you try to give them, ways to get themselves out of the system to go to school, oh, no, I can't do that. Oh, no, that's too hard. But they keep, going door to door to beg for a job, and, years later, they're still begging for a job. What about those people? What kind of advice would you give them?
Well, again, that's low self-worth, self-punishment, self-sabotage. These are all mind patterns that have to go. And it also connects to what Janet said earlier about the parasite mentality, where, and that's part of what I've been seeing also, where these younger people especially feel that everyone owes them something and should give them money, them a job, them a car, and they don't have to do anything in return. I see that all the time. So there's this mentality going out there of victimization and hopelessness and despair that's being embedded in the population, and so when you have people like that, you're going to have a lot of mind control people who will just do what they're told to get out of their situation. So when you see people like that won't take the advice or do the work necessary to improve their situation, Miss Mugzzi, sometimes you just have to step back and they have to go on their own way. It's like I can give someone a beautiful, wonderful plate of food to eat and they're starving and they say, well, I don't like that stuff. It makes me allergic or I can't eat that. Well, that's your business. Here's the opportunity. If you refuse it, that's your stuff, and you have to, that's their pathway. You cannot force, love, peace, and prosperity on people if they don't accept it. And the main reason is because they don't love and respect their own selves, and so therefore they can't do that in the world. So sometimes you just have to step back and let them go on their way.
Yeah, you can't help everybody. I mean, not everybody's going to be on the same path. And again, going back to all things come from God mind, well, I say eventually all paths lead to God mind. So we're on a path, and we like our path, and it works for us. And therefore, if the people that are around you aren't on your path, that's because it's not their path. And if you can't put somebody on a path, you may think that this is the best road for them to have a job or whatever, but who knows who they're teaching with what they're doing. So you have to go to that oversoul level, and you have to see what's really going on here, and am I supposed to do something? Is this where they're supposed to be? It becomes really more of an objective analysis of what's happening so that you can understand it, and you may not agree with it. It's not necessarily for you to agree. It's only really for you to understand.
And Miss Mugzzi, also, I travel all over the world, and I see a lot of things. And even though there are 7 billion plus people on this planet, really, most of the world is empty. And when you travel, you drive, you fly, or what have you, you look around, most of the planet is not populated. The population lives in concentrated areas, so there are vast vast areas of land on this planet that could be growing food, that could house people. Every resource that we really need is available, but it's not being utilized purposely. And they say that if you took everybody on the world and you made them live in the same population density as, let's say, New York City, then you could fit all 7 billion people on the planet in the state of Texas, and the rest of the world would be empty. So that tells you how much is available out there. This planet really is abundant, and if we stop listening to the global warming, people and how we're ruining the planet, we're ruining our minds. That's what's being ruined. If we fix our minds and put it to good use, everybody would have abundance and prosperity. There is enough for everybody right now. And so that's what I say to people. Look at the abundance and prosperity within yourself, get that going and project it out, and then we could really have a true paradise on this planet.
Okay, now I got some really good questions. First of all, can you explain this to me? And you've probably talked about this 100 times, but I cannot find any pieces about this. We have people that are doing some kind of a dark occult rituals that is allowing fourth density beings, which are supposed to be the archons, to come into their bodies. But then we're supposed to have reptilians in underground bases. So which is it? Are they incarnating through people like an avatar, or do we really have them here? Or are the reptilians actually the Greys in some kind of a bodysuit? I mean, I've heard all this stuff. Can you set us straight, please?
Miss Mugzzi, you got to stop looking on the internet. Because you're going to, whatever you want to find, you're going to find it there. Every story that you can imagine. Yeah, of course there are groups of people out there in the elite system that do ritual to bring in entities from the lower astral. Yes, absolutely, they do that. The so-called archons, which have become popularized lately, that's basically the original colonists on the planet who were reptilian, and they were androgynous and had a lot of abilities, and they exist through our DNA. They exist through the non-physical aspects of life. Like Janet mentioned earlier, and like what I write about, anything you can imagine exists somewhere, because there are infinite realities and alternate parallel universes where all kinds of possibilities exist. But you know what? Again, who cares? Everything exists, so why worry about it? God mind is infinite and abundant. It creates all things. All we need to be concerned about is what's going on in our minds. So, who cares who's doing negative rituals or invoking this or that, astral entity? Doesn't matter, because if you don't allow it to affect you, it won't, and it cannot. Remember, nothing can have power over you unless you allow it. There are reptilians, there are aliens. Yes, these things do exist, and yes, they have a very harsh agenda against humanity, but we do not have to be part of that. We do not have to accept that. And if the world, the human species, removes that from their collective mind patterns, then these things cannot exist. And so they would just go away. And so that's what I'm looking forward to, is people learning how to take their power back and then not allowing any of these oppressors to have any power over them. And then everything will change.
What about the two timelines? There's supposed to be a positive and a negative one. We're supposed to be on the positive timeline.
Well, again,
what are your
that's
thoughts
all kinds. That's what you're talking, all kinds of New Age mumbo jumbo. There's infinite timelines. There's not two timelines. There's like infinite. You can't even count them. Like I just mentioned, there unbelievable, infinite realities, physical, non-physical, and you cannot judge them positive or negative. They just are. They just are what they are. You know, I could take a knife and I can carve beautiful sculptures with it, or I can kill somebody with it. It's not the knife's fault. It's what I do with it. So the timeline makes no difference which one you're in. It's what you're doing with it. See? So we need to apply what we know from within ourselves, from the God mind within, and apply beneficial energies to ourselves and others. And it doesn't matter what timeline you're in, because you're doing what's best for everybody.
What about the two Earths? Are we supposed to be splitting? Because, I mean, the Hopi talk about it, and then you see it everywhere, that the planet's actually going to split, and one's going to go to a 5D, and the other one's going to go back to the 3D and play out. Dolores Cannon's work.
Well, I know, and I know Dolores, and I like her very much. She's a very sweet lady, but it is a matter of perspective, and and you know what? I was actually on a show with Dolores, and all the people on the show were talking about New World Order and all the terrible things that are going to happen and all this. And Dolores says, "You know what?" She said, "I don't have that in my reality. I'm not going to experience that because I don't believe that's going to happen, and I'm going to not be part of that." And you know what? She was right, because that's what she means. I mean, people are taking the words and turning them into something else. It's a matter of semantics. It's not that the Earth is going to split, or that one's going to go here, one's going to... No, it's a question of what are you going to choose for yourself? Are you going to choose the negative manifestations, or are you going to choose things that are good for you? You know, that's the choice. That's the split. It's what you choose. But you can choose infinite things, and it's a question of what you accept into your reality. But no, the Earth isn't splitting. It's the same Earth as it always has been and always will be. If there's 5 dimensions or a gazillion dimensions, there already are. You know, we're already in a multi-dimensional existence. So it's just a question of which ones we choose to experience.
I had to mute myself because I was laughing. You have such a great way of explaining things. What about the Dreamland program? Somebody in the chat room asked me if you would explain that. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, there's all kinds of mind control programming, and one of the Dreamland and Dreamland is really an umbrella for many different mind control experiments, and part of that is that the satellite transmissions or the cell tower transmissions enter into the dream state of people, and enter programming, alter realities, bring different personalities forward, and so that the person goes into a mind control function. And then when they come back or wake up into the physical world, there's a confusion of, did I have this experience or was it a dream? What's the dream? What's the reality? And so that's part of it, and it kind of goes into kind of what the Matrix movies were showing you, where all these people were like really sleeping in their little compartments, and they had these virtual worlds that they thought were real, but they were really dreaming about it, and it was being programmed into their mind. That's kind of what's going on. Things that are going on in the world are basically staged for fooling and tricking the population into thinking one thing or another. And like I said, the real, or I should say the actual existence is within us. What we see in the outer world is really an illusion. It's a projection of symbols in order to create some type of a reality for us. And we can change those symbols and change what is manifested in front of us. It doesn't matter where you live or who you are. You each have the capacity of creating your own environment.
What about, according to you guys, how do you envision breaking through this glass ceiling of tyranny and getting to the other side where we're being able to manifest these community gardens and, all the la-la stuff? But how do you envision us getting from where we are today through that glass ceiling?
Well, it's glass, so it can be easily broken, right? What we have to do, and it just goes back to what I was saying, is you got to change the way you think. The only ceiling, the only prison that encompasses you is the one you create for yourself. So it doesn't matter, what rules and regulations exist. If you take them upon yourself and make them your reality, you'll be keeping yourself blocked. I hear people, like you mentioned, people say, I can't do this, I can't do that, it's too expensive, it's too far, it's too hard. Well, then you put yourself in a glass ceiling or a stone ceiling.
Or a box.
And so you're the only one that can get yourself out of it because you created it. It doesn't matter what the CNN tells you or what the government tells you. Your reality, your actuality is what you are accepting and creating and projecting out. So here's a visualization everybody can do. Visualize yourself inside whatever box or prison you've created. Then visualize a violet sledgehammer in your hands and break down the walls and the ceilings and remove it so that you're out in the open infinitely and there's open space all around you. Break yourself out of the prison. Do that exercise every day until you're no longer surrounded by walls and ceilings.
What, according to you guys, would be the most important thing for planning for this new year? How would they prioritize what's important?
Well, first of all, you have to realize that this is a healing year. And so it is interesting because we had talked on our show to a fellow, Gary the numbers guy, and he said, well, it's a year of accidents, and we are saying it's a year of healing, and so in a way it sounds opposite, but it's not, because a lot of times in order to break things up, so you can heal, you have accidents, and so we talk about proactively going out there and looking inside of yourself what needs to be corrected, and correct it now. Don't wait for something to grab your attention and you have to be reactive about it. You need to decide now what you need to be in. And like I said, we have our memberships site, which, $7 a month is pretty darn cheap, but that helps, feed our system so we can continue to give back. I have the end of February, my Mind Plug 2012 to come in, and you can do things there. But it's so easy, and that's the thing, is there's so much out there. Again, I'll say things, a story I tell often, what's the best way to hide a pebble? Where's the best place to hide it? Well, put it on the beach with a bunch of other pebbles. So it becomes complicated. Well, which is the real pebble? Which are all the phony pebbles? It's a challenge for people, and so we do understand that, but technically it's really easy. You just got to start.
Stewart?
Yes, and I agree with that because, as I've been telling people, the solution to every problem is in the problem. So when you look at the issues that are disturbing you, within the context of those issues is the solution. And all you have to do is rework it in order for the solution to come out.
And I go a little step beyond that and say we don't even call it a problem. We just call it a challenge. Where are you challenged in your life? Because a problem means, oh my God, I get caught up in it in my mind. Whereas a challenge, it challenges you to stretch yourself. Instead of sitting back and complaining, you are challenged to grow. And if you understand that it really is just a reflection of you, of some part of you in an exaggerated way, if you can look in that mirror, if you're brave enough to look in the mirror and see what you have created, then because you created it, and you know how you created it step by step, you can dismantle it step by step. Just like if you built a house or a building and you did it yourself, you can think, okay, this is what I put in first, this is what I got to take out, and this is my last step, therefore that's where I've got to start to dismantle.
And even if you make a mistake, that's okay, because the mistake is showing you now what not to do again in the future. So it's okay. It's okay to have a problem or make a mistake or have these issues, because you're going to learn from it. That's why you have them. They're not accidental. You're not punished by them, but you're learning from them so that you can move on to the next level and not recreate those things.
And again, I say it's really not even a mistake, because this is the best that you could do with the tools and the techniques that you had. So that really is your best. And for myself, when I go to bed at the end of every day, I know that I have done my best. That doesn't mean I did everything in my life perfectly, but for whatever it was, maybe I was short and grumpy, because I didn't get enough sleep, or I have something weighing on my mind, but it was still my best. Now I know that good can get better, and so I'll work at that, but I don't go to bed criticizing myself for what I didn't do under the circumstances, considering the amount of sleep I had, or considering this issue that's on my mind, or the pile of paperwork that's sitting there. Under the conditions that I had, I still did my best. So I have learned, very diligently not to judge and criticize myself. And in my Decoding Your Life book, again, that's all about universal law. Very simple, very basic. Don't judge and criticize yourself. You are doing the best with what you have available. And the more, it's just like exercising your body. Those get stronger. You exercise your mental capabilities. You exercise, whatever is going on in your mind, it gets stronger and stronger. And you grow and you get better at what you do. But it's a process, and that's what this is ultimately about. We really are just a finger of the God mind down here experiencing it, because it wants to know what it is. And as you find out what it is, that information gets transmitted back through the subconscious bridge, back into your superconscious mind, all the way back to the God mind. Now it knows what it is through direct experience. So that's really your function, if you want to break that down to that degree. And so what you did that day, that was the learning process. That was understanding the steps. That was putting more things in motion. It had a purpose. It had a point. Blah, blah, blah. So, don't get wrapped up again in this emotional, woe is me, because you're going to stay there. You got to move on.
That's excellent. I just want to let you guys know we're down to our last 13 minutes, but according to your opinions and from what you have seen, where would you gauge the group collective at this point in time?
You mean the consciousness of humanity as a species?
Correct.
Yeah, well, I think that we are at the very critical moment in human history, because this year especially, even people who didn't want to know anything and didn't believe in anything, they are going to find out one way or the other that there's something going on. And so again, I think it's going to propel many people into another level of understanding. And on the other hand, it might make some who do not want to accept it go the other way. And I think that's why we're seeing so many sudden deaths with people, even young people that you never would suspect would be ill or passed on, or suddenly passing on the last year or so, because they know it's coming and they've decided not to participate in that. So that's what we're seeing happening on the world, and I think that humanity ultimately has to progress. I don't think we're going to remain ignorant forever. It's not possible. There'd be no point in existing in that case. So yeah, we're going to learn and progress, and it's just a question of, is it going to be today, or is it going to be tomorrow, or is it going to be 1,000 years from tomorrow? But each one of us will progress one way or the other.
Janet?
Well, you know what? I think similarly, of course, along the same lines that Stewart does, but I also feel, in a way, going back to when you had talked about the splitting of the earth, I do feel that there will be a split within the consciousness of humanity, and that some are not done being oppressed, where others are ready to stop that oppression. And I believe that there will be a split, and it's always possible that maybe we'll be relocated off-world at some point, because I know, again, they're talking more and more about off-world planets, and even Stephen Hawking's
brought up the fact that the survival of humanity is going to be dependent on being populating other worlds. And of course, now they're finding more Earth-like planets, and they're finding this and they're finding that every day. So my personal feeling is at some point there will be a split, and those who are not in that oppressive mind pattern, I think that they're going to go somewhere else, and those who are, they're going to go somewhere else. So I think things will change, maybe not the way people expected, but I think depending, again, what you decide to participate in, what you create as your reality, that's what's going to happen. You know, you have a choice, and you are creating. It's just the issue is most people create unconsciously. Our goal is to help people learn that they're creating unconsciously, and then to make choices to consciously create what it is that they do want.
What are you guys seeing as the most needed tools for 2012 that you guys are going to be teaching?
Well, I think the 2012 is the make or break year, as I see it. You know, you're either going to learn or you're just going to stay the way you are for a long time. So I think one of the most important tools is self-discovery. And in fact, this April, I think it's the last weekend in April.
No, I don't. No, it's not the last weekend. But I'll look it up on my calendar so we have it. Well,
we're doing a seminar on, and Janet, what's the name of the seminar?
It's called Death, Disease, Detox, and Determination. And I'll get you the dates here. It's going to be April 20, 21st, and 22nd here in St. Joseph.
And so in that weekend, we're going to pull all of this information together and show you how to pull yourself out of the mind patterns that are holding you back and to progress once and for all. And what you will learn, there's no going back. You're just going to keep progressing and going up and achieving everything that you want to achieve when you learn all of this information.
And you're going to find out that you have more choices than what you thought. And again, how you get locked into a box because of the mass programming that's put out there, and so you don't think you have a choice, and how you fulfill that non-choice, so to speak, in the way that the global handlers want you to. So that's really, again, what we're teaching you to do, is to decide what you want, not what you told that you want. So most people don't know what it is that they want because there is so much in a box, even those people who think they're not in a box. You know, it's like some of these things that you're bringing up, and Stewart's kind of chuckling about over there, and it's what's being put out there, because rather than let you go deep inside, they're going to throw this out and distract you. You know, here's a carrot, here's a Snickers bar, here's a Mounds bar, you know, here's something else that's going to keep you busy and hopping around in a circle rather than going deep inside. And so our goal is to get you off of this, and so you can recognize for yourself what's part of the New Age programming, you know, to find out that, hey, you are in a box. You may not think you are, but you are there. Let's get you really out of the box instead of just think you're out of the box.
Help me with this one. I hear this all the time. One spouse will be aware, they're doing their work, but their mate thinks that their awakening is just hubbaloo, and they don't want anything to do with it. How do you handle it when your mate isn't on the same page as you?
Again, you can only work on yourself. It's like Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, you go to the meeting, you know, alone. You do what you need to do, and then either that person will come in along a line with you, or that person will move out of your life. And that's the thing that people really don't want to face, but that's the truth of it. You know, in order for somebody to be in your world, you have to have a matching color, tone, and archetype / symbol. And as long as it's there, that person's going to be in your life, reflecting some part of you back, and at some point, if that changes, then they're out of there. But I always tell people, you know what, go with the lesson that you know rather than just trying to recreate the same one over and over and over again. If they're not beating you and abusing you, there's a reason. Learn from that reason. Thank them for being a teacher, and then figure out together, or on the oversoul level, you know, are you going to move on together or not? And you may or you may not. We don't exactly know, but there's still a reason you're together. You need to figure it out.
Yeah, I see that all the time with people that I deal with where one or the other of the spouses is not into the information and even tries to stop the one who's learning from learning the information. And that's because they're in fear. They're in fear that the spouse who's learning will know more than them and realize how their spouse is really stagnant and want to leave them. And so it's a fear issue, basically.
But then that person still has to look at why that they're seeing fear.
Why they're with that person.
But because one is always reflective of the other as long as there's matching color, tone, and archetype.
And so, and basically it boils down to this. It doesn't matter who's with you, what's going on around you. You have to do your own work and do what you know is best for you. And then the people around you either accept or reject that, and that's their stuff.
What do you guys have on the plate? I'm down to my last 5 minutes. What do you have on the plate, and where can they find you, and what kind of resources do you have on the Internet that they can go look up?
Well, of course, our website, expansions.com, we have tons and tons of free information out there. We are really moving to a membership site because what we're trying to do and what we're in the process of doing is getting our information out easier and more accessible to more people. So the first level is free. It's the Royal Blue Forum. They can sign up for free, and we have a huge forum and a wonderful community in there, like minds of people who are getting there, and there's a lot of wisdom from the community. Stewart and I pop in. We have some of our trusted people that have been with us for decades who are in there, and they're also on the forums helping sort things out for people. From there, there's a $7 per month Violet membership, and we've got great information going on in that section as well. More affirmations and articles by Stewart and I. We go up to Silver membership. We have a Deprogramming journal that we've just started in there, and also they can ask Stewart and I questions, which we will answer if it's applicable to the general membership. And then we have our Gold membership, which is the next step, which we're loading those with more videos all the time. We have a pay-per-view section going on now, so we're getting our information out in a more affordable way for people. I have the February Mindplex 2012, where I help people work on opening up that bridge from the conscious to the superconscious mind so they get those messages and understand them from their oversoul so they can move forward. We have in April, as we mentioned about coming up, our death, disease, detox, and determination seminar. We have personal consultations going on. We always have stuff that keep people moving and shaking.
And we have new books possibly coming out this year. We have our podcast that you can see every week online on our site. There's just so much going on. It's almost too much to even explain in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, and we've been expanding our website in a year-long process. We're about 6 months into it. It could even go into 18 months, depending upon, but it is really fabulous. We're so thrilled with what we can offer right now.
Do you guys have any free time?
No.
No, we don't.
We really are 24/7. It's just unbelievable.
What about parting thoughts? You guys get 2 minutes.
Well, like I say to everybody, you can be whoever and whatever you want to be. Do not be intimidated by fear. Don't listen to what you hear on the news. Go within, learn all you can about yourself and about creation, and apply what you know. That's the main thing. People learn information and they sit on it. You have to apply it so that it works in your life, and then you can be an example to others, and when they see how wonderful things work for you, then they can do the same thing. So you become a light to them, and they can follow along what you do, and then eventually it'll reach a critical mass across the planet, and then everything can turn better, and we can have a wonderful place to live.
And I'd just like to add that I want everybody to recognize that you are the most fascinating person that you know, and once you know who you are just going to be absolutely amazed, and you are your own best teacher. So that's what I want people to take away with them, because when they know that, it encourages them to get in there and really dig and find out. Instead of living their life through myself or Stewart or whoever else is out there, yourself, they need to find out who they are.
All right, you guys, thank you for the great show, and thank you for your time. I really appreciate and respect you for what you're doing, and you sure are helping a lot of people pave the way into this new terrain. Thank you.
Well, thank you for all you're doing. Yeah, you're doing amazing work bringing this information out and helping get it out to the public.
We appreciate you, and thank you for the segment on your show.
Thank you. And there will be a video that we're going to be putting up this week, so I'll make that available, and all the links that we discussed can be on the video as well.
great. That's wonderful.
We appreciate it.
Okay, you guys. Thanks so much.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Have a good evening.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Okay, you guys. We are going to do the video. It will be up on YouTube. We are going to put up the information as well. Didn't get the call in because I was waiting for somebody to call in, but he never did. I didn't see it come up on my board. I had the wrong number. But anyway, you guys, this is the year for you, and I can't stress that enough. As you're doing your research, pull yourself away from the TV, reintroduce yourself to your friends, your family, your neighbors. Make that your important thing instead of it's Monday Night Football. Remember the people in your life. And Janet was right. You know, a lot of stuff that we have sitting in our closets that aren't being used, there's really needy people out there that could use them. And if you guys just turn around and remember that we're all one and help each other, because when you help somebody else, you're really helping yourself because it goes out into your community and it always comes back. So if you have extra clothes, if you have extra things, look at your homeless shelters. Look at your women's battered shelters. See where you can jump in and help. I'm also working with the rescues and helping the dogs get into homes. And sometimes it's just the smallest thing that you can do that will make the biggest impact. So I want you guys to look for that this week. And